Fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just a part of this program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You not whack, you just sound whack rapping after us. For real.
What up, Justin?
Hello? Is this thing on?
It is. It does
the microphone's
work.
working. Oh,
does
wow.
work. Look
Finally.
at that. It only took a couple weeks for you to get it right the first time.
We broke the streak. I mean, it was like a month-long streak.
Yeah.
Starting off the show.
I almost think you should forfeit that belt on your shoulder right now because of it.
I'm down. But
yeah,
I'm excited for today's show. And the reason why I brought this belt is because you and I are the official heavyweight champion in the podcasting world.
Why? How was that?
I keep finding an excuse to bring this WWE belt onto the show. And I was like, I can't think of anything. So we're the undisputed heavyweight champions of the podcasting world. But even though we are champs, we always appreciate having our guests. We don't have a guest today, but we will have a guest next week and also weeks moving forward. So just gonna be Saul and I today. But don't worry, you got the undisputed, undefeated heavyweight champions in the podcasting world. So I'm excited for today's podcast.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate that intro very much there, Justin. I think you set it up very well. And if you're new to our show, please hit the like button, subscribe. First of all, we're popular worldwide. I just want to say that. I always like to say we're India, actually England now. The analytics tell us that, so I'm going to run with that. And it's fun doing this show because we talk about a little bit of everything, right? And so let's start there. First and foremost, college basketball. Let's just start there. There are so many college basketball openings. This week alone, I think there was like 4 that opened up. It's pretty insane right about now. What are we doing? What's going on? Who's going where? Like, what is your whole interpretation? Let's start with Arizona.
I'm glad you decided to start with Arizona, Saul. And I'm curious to get your take on your alma mater because I know you got some.
I've been pretty quiet all week about this.
So, all the openings, Cincinnati, Arizona, they're all over the country. But starting with Arizona, that's the biggest one, I think, in college hoops right now because Arizona, as you know, Saul, is not a blue blood, but is still a top-level elite basketball program, probably a top 2 job on the West Coast, top 3 job on the West Coast. I think UCLA, with the history and location and everything, I would still give UCLA the nod over Arizona in terms of tradition, what they meant to college basketball, but Arizona's right there. And Sean Miller's led that program for 12 years and could never get it to the heights that Lute Olson had the program, which was getting it to a Final Four and competing for a national championship year in and year out. My colleague Bruce Pascoe of the Arizona Daily Star actually made a good point. When Lute Olson was at Arizona, it seemed like every 4 years Arizona was in the Final Four.
Yeah, they felt like that, yeah.
Where Sean Miller, he was here for 12 years, got to the Elite Eight 3 out of the first 6 years, plateaued.
It goes 88, and then 94, and then 97, and then 2001. So, yeah, about every 4 years.
Yeah.
And in between there, they had some first-round exits, which were epic like failures. Let's be honest, losing to Santa Clara in the first round as a 2 seed, we had some pretty low lows, but the highs were equally as high.
Exactly. And I think that's where the whole Sean Miller era, it went wrong in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But when you look at on-court success, and that's what the athletic director Dave Hickey said, on-court and off-court elements played into making this decision to move on from Sean Miller. On-court elements, they haven't won an NCAA tournament game since 2017.
Yep. Yeah. When we were there the last time that happened.
Exactly.
That's how long ago that happened. You know what I mean? A couple things with Sean Miller specifically. Obviously, the FBI investigation is going to hurt him. That's been a cloud over this program for 4 years now. It feels like 3 years,
almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years. That's a long, long time. And I think that hurts a program. It obviously hurts a program. I think what Sean Miller does, I think Sean Miller has a an amazing ability to be able to compartmentalize and get through certain things like the FBI investigation. I remember his speech where he said, "I can't wait to speak about this openly and tell you exactly what really went on." I remember that to this day, and I wonder if we're ever going to hear that. I don't think we ever will. Sean Miller's just not that kind of dude. He doesn't open up to people. He doesn't, he keeps his circle pretty tight. And so just a lot of different things went into that. The other thing is Sean Miller, yes, he had the early success, and he was able to regroup the fan base when they got to the Elite Eight in 2011 with Derek Williams and hold them essentially for the next 10 years, especially with the flashes of the the number one recruiting class with Aaron Gordon and the subsequent year after that. Like, there was a lot of promise and a lot of hope. You just felt like, oh man, he's so close, it's gonna happen, right? It never did. And you start to see, like, okay, is it not happening because of just bad luck, which you could chalk it up to the first couple of Elite Eights, against Wisconsin. Like, Frank Kaminsky goes crazy in one tournament, and then the next year, Sam Decker goes absolutely berserk. Sometimes it just happens, and it's not your day. Cool. But then you have the number one overall pick in DeAndre Ayton. This is the one that really takes me from here to here. When you have the number one overall pick, and the way that he was being used in that offense, and the lack of ability to be able to draw up plays and really come up with sets in order to get DeAndre Ayton the ball in certain opportunities, especially when you're facing a team like Buffalo, you kind of get exposed a little bit. And Sean Miller has largely been known as a pack line defensive coach. Offensively, not as strong a coach as some others in the country. I think I'm not breaking any news by saying that at all.
Sure.
He needed to do more with what he had. And when he had the immense talent and the expectations on that talent, he wasn't really able to live up to where that talent was expected to go. Now, all that aside, he's a consistent 20-win winner. And at Arizona, that's a good place to be. But there's a dangerous thing to do where you thrive in excellence in areas where, there's not a lot of risk, if you will. The NCAA tournament is a high-risk, high-reward tournament, right? He wasn't able to thrive in that situation, at least not since 2015, the last time the Arizona Wildcats made it to an Elite Eight. And it's been 6 years and a couple first-round exits, a Sweet 16 loss to an Xavier team, which was his former employer, and they should have just gotten a lot further than they did. And when you see, and the microcosm is the last time that they lost in the Sweet 16, they lost to Xavier, and Xavier lost to what I consider the best program on the West Coast right now, Gonzaga. And Gonzaga's been to a couple Final Fours in the last couple years. Gonzaga is that team on the West Coast right now that is the best team on the West Coast. They have the best program on the West Coast. It used to be debatable. It's not debatable anymore. In the last 5 years,
They're
5 to
top
10
dog.
years, they are the top dog in the West Coast. And they play in the West Coast Conference. That's a problem. If you're Arizona and they were on the border of being a blue blood, they're not a blue blood anymore because they can't manage to reach that upper level like Gonzaga has broken through the ceiling and done. And Gonzaga's kryptonite is not being able to win the national championship, but that's no different than Lute. Lute, the first couple times he went to the Final Four, didn't win a national championship, and then he broke through. There you go.
I want to go back to your point about how it's affected every single college basketball program that was involved in the FBI scandal.
Oh,
I feel like Arizona has it worst. And it has affected them in some way. But then I look at all the other schools. Kansas, they gave Bill Self a lifetime contract.
but they weren't even in the FBI investigation.
They were in the Adidas part of it. Will Wade, still at LSU. They make the NCAA tournament. Oklahoma State, they have Cade Cunningham, who's probably going to be one of the top picks in the NBA draft. They go to the NCAA tournament and make somewhat of a run. So
Bruce Pearl and Auburn made it to the Final Four 3 years ago, like right after the investigation.
Yeah. So I think it's affected programs to some degree, but I think Arizona definitely has it the worst.
I will say this too, also, by the way, just to throw this out there. I think that there's something here, and I'm not trying to play the race card at all, but I think it's really effed up that you have 4 head coaches, all of them are white, and you have 4 assistant coaches who all get hammered, and all of them are black by the FBI. Like, I don't like the optics of that. I don't like the way that plays out. I don't agree with the way, you're busting these guys. You just know that there was more out there that they could have found had they just kind of played it cool. Like, the FBI kind of jumping the gun here, I think, is the biggest travesty in all this. And
we have your playbook.
For that matter, the FBI being involved in the first place is an absolute travesty. It's a waste of taxpayer money. It's ludicrous. It was stupid to begin with. I think a lot of people agree with that. But I do like what USC did. Like, okay, so Bland got busted and he left. Andy Enfield didn't turn his back on Bland. He said he'll always be a member of the USC family. We appreciate everything that he helped us with, and then that was it. So at least like, you got caught, you got busted, whatever. Like, your boy had your back for a little bit, right? I've never heard Sean Miller say one thing about Book Richardson since this all went down. And you just know with the control that Sean Miller had in that program, and I think that's why people were believing about the $100,000 to Ayton and all this other stuff, which ended up being complete BS because nothing has ever been proven about that whatsoever. No. And it was a shame that ESPN even ran that story in the first place, unverified, undocumented. Like, it was a travesty in journalism to begin with. Yeah. But again, Sean Miller, you've dealt with him day in and day out for the better part of 6 years, Justin. So I've dealt with him for 3 straight years. Like, anything that goes by, this guy holds grudges against journalists who publish a video of him scolding a player. Like, this guy doesn't remember, he doesn't forget anything. Like, he's got a photographic memory. The fact that he would let something like this slide on the side, I just don't buy it. Yeah. I just don't. There's something that smells there. Outside of that, let's just take it for what it's worth. Sean Miller is a good coach. Will he find himself in the NCAA? I don't know. There's rumors about him going to the NBA instead. I know a lot of coaches that prefer to go the NBA route because they don't have to deal with a lot of the stupid BS on the side, right? I don't know if he's ever going to coach in college again. Cincinnati is an interesting proposition for him to go to Cincinnati possibly. It just so happens that somebody had got fired there this week, and that position's open, ironically enough.
And that was his longtime rival.
That was his longtime rival.
Cincinnati, Mick Cronin and Sean Miller.
Very fascinating. Very fascinating. Anyway, a lot of coaching openings around the country. The wheel keeps on turning. The sands of the hourglass continue to fall, as they would say. So, but anyway, moving along from that, what was your take on the Final Four? We had the women's and the men's Final Four. Obviously, we have a little bit of buy-in to the women's Final Four because Arizona made it to the national championship, and they were one bucket away from taking the title, which still to this day, it's been a week, and I still get goosebumps, and I still get chills, and I still get giddy over that because I just love ball, and I love the fact that these women were able to come out of nowhere and do what they did. And then the men's game, the national championship game was a bust, but Gonzaga, UCLA, that game, wow.
Yeah. Starting off with the women's Final Four, I love that the Wildcats were the spoiler. They were the only non-number 1 seed in the Final Four. And unfortunately, that's been the case with women's college basketball. I mean, for as long as I can remember, you always have your top dogs, the number 1 seeds. It's almost guaranteed it's going to be chalk all the way through the women's college basketball tournament. But sometimes. Okay.
You do realize that the women were the first to have the 1 versus 16 upset, the very first one.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah.
Who was the 16th seed then?
Oh, I don't even remember. I'll look it up right now. You keep talking. Okay. I'll talk.
But the fact that Arizona was the number 3 seed, they were in the Mercado region. I think they got the perfect route to get to the Final Four. The teams that they have played, it was just a perfect match for Arizona. Then they get to almighty UConn, and Paige Buckets was on the other side, and everyone thought UConn was just going to win by 30 and cruise to a Final Four and eventually a national championship. But Ari McDonald and company had something to say about that, and they just took it to UConn the entire game. I love that part. That was one of my favorite moments of March.
Number in 1998, Harvard beat the Harvard of the West in Stanford, 16-1. First upset right there.
Shout out to Harvard. Go Ivy League. But the women's tournament was definitely something to behold this year. I loved every minute of it. And I honestly think the entire country rallied around the women's college basketball tournament. Maybe it's just living in Arizona and seeing the hype around the Wildcats, but to me, it seemed like a lot of people were dialed into the women's college basketball Final Four, and I think that's just so great for the sport. These players are so talented and skilled. To see them get the pub that they got this year, I think it was incredible, and I hope it continues. Now going on to the men's Final Four. That bank shot by Jalen Suggs.
Ooh.
Incredible moment. Incredible moment. Yeah. But can we just talk about for a second how he went on to the scores table and was hyping himself up, and then all of a sudden they pan the camera over and he's like yelling into the crowd, and it's just nothing but cardboard cutouts.
Did you forget? Did you forget? Yeah.
So yeah, there's still a pandemic going on, but that moment was awesome. And also, speaking of Cincinnati, when we were talking about their job opening up, remember their coach Mick Cronin came over to UCLA and was option number 7. I remember all the boosters wanted Rick Pitino, that slimy greaseball of a coach, but that's a conversation for another day.
Whoa, all right.
I got some issues with Rick Pitino. But Mick Cronin was not even option number 1, not option number 2, number 3, number 4. They settled for Mick Cronin, and a lot of people thought, is that going to work? Is the Midwest tough-nosed basketball coaching, is that going to work at a place like UCLA? Well, he took UCLA's talent that was coached by Steve Alford, kicked their asses over the last couple of years, got them into shape, added Johnny Juzang from Kentucky, and they put together this incredible run. And I remember Steve Lavin, who has said that he's going to join this program in the future. Now, whether that's next week or maybe going into next year, that remains to be seen. But I texted Steve Lavin, what do you think about the Bruins?
I love me some Steve Lavin.
Steve Lavin's awesome, man.
Dude, he's the GOAT, man.
And he was so excited. And I remember in, I think, January, he was on Fox Sports promoting UCLA as a national championship contender. And even I thought he was smoking some of Cali's finest kush. But it turns out UCLA was, in fact, a national contender. So shout out to Steve Lavin for making that call. So, I mean, college basketball was great this year. Even if it was during a pandemic, Conference of Champions is right, Josh Coleman.
Right. Conference of Champions. Dude, I love it. I love it. I love everything about Steve Lavin. I love the fact that the Pac-12 absolutely represented in the NCAA tournaments, both women and men. They had 3 teams make it to the Elite 8. They had 2 teams make it to the Final Four for the women, 1 team on the men's side. The Pac-12, for as much as they have been dragged through the dirt the last several years because of off-the-court things such as distribution for the Pac-12 network and things of that nature, they absolutely showed out and showed that there's some good ball out here on the West. Like, if you don't watch basketball except at 7 p.m. Eastern, then you're going to miss out on all the whole other coast that has a whole bunch of hoopers. And most likely, if you're watching Kentucky or if you're watching some of the Blue Bloods on the East Coast, there's probably a good chance that you have some California or AZ represent on those rosters. And they got to start somewhere. It's because they come out here. That's all the good tournaments are out here anyway. Like, let's be real. Like, all the good AAU tournaments are in California, they're in Arizona, they're in Vegas. Like, there's a reason for that. It's because people like to live out here, and it's awesome. Just saying.
West Coast is great.
West Coast, y'all. Let's go.
Yeah. West, buddy.
So anyway, outside of that, so we got the NCAA tournament. That was cool. March Madness. The pandemic seems like it's starting to ease up. There are a lot of venues are opening sports to fans finally again. The venues to fans. Baseball being one of them. And if you took a look at the Texas Rangers and their sold-out stadium last week, I'm not going to lie, Justin, there was a part of me that was like, I got anxiety just looking at this video right now, just thinking about the implications or what could happen if, 1, 2, 10, 500 people have COVID in this arena, you know what I mean, or in the stadium. But outside of that, a lot of other teams are taking the responsible approach and opening it up to fans at a moderate level. I know here in Arizona, it's 20,000 fans. I know other stadiums are like, 3, 4, 5,000 fans. But baseball's back, and you're a Dodgers fan. So I figured, why the hell not? Let's talk about it. You saw the championship ceremony. What did you think about the rings?
Incredible. One of the best ring presentations I've ever seen. The players, they get the ring box, they open it up. Mm-hmm. Dude, there's a highlight film inside of the case where the ring is, and each player has their own like customized highlight reel inside of their ring case. It's
like a Top Shot video thing. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I love that part, and it was so cool to finally see the Dodgers celebrate getting a championship. It's been a long time coming. Sorry, Saul.
I know you guys have suffered so much in LA. Yes. Go ahead, carry on.
Haven't won a World Series since 1988, man. And they've had so many opportunities. They just couldn't get over just that curse. They had to face the Houston Astros, which, yeah,
curveball.
You hear that? You hear that knock? Oh wait, you know what? Wait. So we're already talking about the Houston Astros. I got my trash can ready to go for this baseball season.
Yeah.
No, I just think with the Houston Astros, with the Boston Red Sox, or even the Chicago Cubs in the National League over the last few years, the Dodgers have faced so many just good, talented teams. And the Dodgers were always talented, but man, the October woes were a real thing, and you felt like Clayton Kershaw was just always going to be just that curse that was never going to be able to win a championship with the Dodgers. So to see Clayton Kershaw finally get that World Series ring, I think that was the best part about the ring ceremony. And Saul, you can continue to roll your eyes all you want. You can sit there and make fun of us Dodgers fans.
I just want to say this, okay? It took a worldwide pandemic for you to win a world championship, okay? I just want to say that out loud, okay? You only played 60 games, all right?
You sound like all
count unless you play 162, okay? I just want to say that out loud.
You sound
I fully expect you guys to go back to back this year, just so you know.
Okay,
I do expect that.
You sound like all the people when the Lakers won the championship, and they said the same thing. Well, you had to go to a bubble. Congrats to LeMickey for winning his ring.
It's different because at least the Lakers played like 70 games before it got shut down, and then they had to go back to the bubble. The Lakers played more games than the Dodgers did to win their title. Think about that. Yeah, drink that water.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
You're that guy that calls.
I'm that guy.
LeMickey.
Hey, I'm just saying, but anyway, baseball's back.
We got a no-hitter.
I'm not the biggest. Yeah, Musgrove last night, the first one in Padres history, 53 years. Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
And he's a San Diego guy.
He is.
So
hometown kid.
Hometown kid doing it for his hometown team. And so I actually had to look this up this morning because I'm like, well, the Padres never had a no-hitter. Well, let me see all the Major League Baseball teams that have had no-hitters. They were the only ones that didn't have a no-hitter.
Yeah, the only one.
They were the only ones.
The last one before them was actually the Cubs.
Did not know that.
The Cubs and the Padres are the only two franchises that have played more than 5,000 games without a no-hitter.
It's incredible.
That's pretty incredible, yeah.
Who threw a no-hitter for your Arizona Diamondbacks?
That would be Randy Johnson, and it wasn't a no-hitter. It was a perfect
game. That's even better.
That's right, 2004. It only took us 6 years. Step up.
Big unit.
That's right. So yeah, baseball is back. I'm not the biggest baseball fan per se, but obviously because of my job, I have to cover it and I watch it quite a bit. And there's something to be said. And Josh Kellman in the chat also said Edwin Jackson also threw a no-hitter, and that was in Tampa. And I think it took him like 153 pitches to do it in Tampa, which is insane. That's a lot of pitches. Nowadays, nobody would ever get past 110, let alone 153 pitches or something like that.
I got to get Tommy John surgery just for that.
All of a sudden, my arm is like, oh man, it's kind of sore right now. I don't know why, But yeah, it's baseball. The thing that I love about baseball, that I do think that they have more than any other sport, is the fact that you can go to a ball game, and it's like a it's an experience to a degree, because it's like the one sport where you can feel the history of the game, right? You will see people that are keeping score the old time way, on their own little chart, they're tracking everything, they're writing it all down, because that's like part of the game for them. That's part of the experience. And you don't really see that in any other sport. You know what I mean? It's the history. It's over 100 years of just, a bat and a ball and a glove. That's it. That's all you need. You know what I mean? And so I love the purity of baseball. And I know people have been wanting to change it. And I've actually had discussions with coworkers about like, oh my gosh, I wish it would go 7 innings instead of 9, or, I don't like I like the fact that they start a runner on second base. And I know baseball purists don't like that. They just want to go for as long as they can until somebody wins the game purely. I like the history of it, but at the same time, I am not down with 5, 6, 7, 8 hour games at all. Like, that is just insanely too much.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would change anything with the sport of baseball other than the promotion of its top players. I feel like baseball has so many stars in the sport, but let's say if Mike Trout walks into an LA mall, and so does Alex Caruso, the backup point guard for the LA Lakers. Yeah. I feel like Alex Caruso might be recognized faster than Mike Trout. And that's my only problem with the sport.
But do you know why that is? Do you know why that is, though? It's because, to your point, the NBA does a phenomenal job of promoting their own product. Okay? Like Major League Baseball, for instance. If you don't know much about this, right? Major League Baseball is not very fan-friendly when it comes to like highlights. You can go on YouTube right now and type in Suns versus Jazz from Wednesday night, and you will see like 150,000 different highlight reels about that game. You type in Padres no-hitter from last night, you might see 5. And a lot of those are going to be based because of like the team partnerships or Major League Baseball itself, or some type of Major League Baseball entity, because you don't have the rights to, like, they completely like strip that of everybody. The NBA views anything as promotional and marketing if it's not live game coverage. Yeah. Whereas MLB doesn't necessarily view it the same way. And the reason why that's a big factor is because that also hurts the younger viewer. Like guys that like your age, my kids, they can't jive with baseball because, if they don't watch a full game for 4.5, 5 hours, I want to see the highlights. If I can't see the highlights anywhere but like maybe ESPN, it's out of sight, out of mind. So I'm not going to pay attention.
I think the only time I've ever seen MLB just super popular compared to the other sports was that 1 week, like 3 or 4 years ago, when everybody was fighting, it felt like. I think it was the same week where Odor hit Joey Batista in the face when the Blue Jays were playing against the Rangers. And then in that same week, there were like 3 fights in MLB. And that's all you saw when you turned on SportsCenter, was just all these brawls in Major League Baseball. That I'm not saying that, MLB should turn into like the XFL or something like that, and
just roll a baseball out. First one that gets the pitch.
But I think the star power, getting faces out there, promoting off-season stuff. Like, why is Major League Baseball draft? I don't even know, like, what time of year does it fall? Is it usually in like May or June?
Dude, I don't know. It's like 195 rounds, man. I don't.
Yeah,
Mel Kiper Jr. would be dead by halfway through. Like, I don't know what to do. You know.
Oh, we need a Mel Kiper Jr. for MLB.
Yeah, that'd be dope. Yeah, he's a 5-tool player. He could do this. He could do this. You know what I mean? Like, I need. Yeah, that's the other thing, right? It feels the fact that we don't know what time of year it is. Man, that's kind of honestly, that's kind of shitty on our part. Let's be real. Mm-hmm. Like, we should know that.
Oh, I love this guy. He's got great speed. He did have Tommy John surgery, but definitely climbing up my big board. We need Mel Kiper in Major League Baseball, but off-season stuff, the draft needs to be a bigger thing. NFL draft is a weekend-long thing. Schmucks like myself are willing to sit down and watch the entire NFL draft.
For hours.
I'm that guy, and you can make fun of me, and rightfully so, but you best believe I'm going to be sitting down watching the 6th round of the NFL draft. NBA draft, it's only 2 rounds, so it's a one-night event that's just so huge. You see the top college basketball players, the top international players get drafted. It's a big deal. For Major League Baseball, I really, there's just no zest with the MLB draft.
They also include the high school players, which to a degree you kind of lose touch with, because I mean, who the hell can keep track of all that, right? Like, that's not my job to scout all that stuff, you know. And so it's a little easier to understand what the NFL is doing and the NBA is doing, and keep track of who's what. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, just like you, I will absolutely praise the backup defensive end for North Dakota State, who just got drafted in the 7th round and is going to be the franchise changer, sleeper pick. Like, I'm that guy. Like, that's fine. But at the same time, there's a lot of dudes. And my son plays baseball at LSU Shreveport. Like, he's a pitcher. Like, I always have.
Alex is shaking his head listening to all this
oh, trust me, he's probably like, Dad, I hate you right now. Like, but like, you know, I always tell him, I was like, just, you know, if you ever got drafted, like, I'll see you every other game. Like, dude, I'm not sitting through 5 hours every single night, dude. I love you, son, but good thing you're a pitcher, and I pretty much know when you're going to pitch. But yeah, you know, baseball, man, you gotta love the purity of it. Again, I would just like to see them market the big players, like you were talking about, like the Ronald Acuñas, you know, of the world, the Cody Bellingers, like, in a way that appeals to the younger demographic and gets them to buy into their product a little bit more. But as it is right now, I think, you know, the challenge that they have is appealing to that younger demographic, because they have a very old timey game. Yeah. And at least the old timey game from my point of view. And I've been following the game for 40 years. So
yeah. If Fernando Tatis Jr. walked into this room right now and he didn't say who he was, the only way I'd know it was Fernando Tatis Jr. is because of his hair.
Yeah, that's true.
If he got rid of his hair, I would have no idea. If Fernando Tatis Jr. walked right in front of me, I would have no idea who he is.
That's a good point.
Joe Musgrove threw a no-hitter. I don't even know what he looks like. Like, what color is his hair? Seriously,
it's long. It's long brown hair.
You got long hair? Okay.
Long brown hair.
And no disrespect to him, but this is just how baseball is to what the kids say casuals, like myself. So
it's pretty sad that, you know, the face of maybe, you know, the offensive lineman for the San Diego Chargers, but you don't know the face of the shortstop for the Dodgers. You know what I mean? Like, what? No, that's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was speaking of which, as we were speaking, AJ Pollock probably got hurt. Just so you know.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
I mean, they got plenty of guys. It's all good.
Before we wrap the show up, obviously yesterday was kind of a crappy day for a lot of people, especially in the music industry, with DMX passing away. DMX, you know, for a younger man like you, obviously you've grown up in the era where you heard the hit songs and then discovered his music after that, right? I grew up in the era where I lived through those hit songs, right? You know, DMX was definitely the soundtrack of my teenage and early 20 years. You know what I mean? DMX, Wu-Tang, Tribe Called Quest, like that was like my playlist going to school. Like that was it. And the one thing I like about DMX, and there was a story that a lady had shared on social media, was the fact that he was so personal and he was so personable. And this lady was talking about how he sat next to her on a flight, and she's in social media, and she was like, you should really do this with your posts instead of posting like this. And he helped her out. He went and grabbed his other phone that he uses for social media or whatever, and they had a conversation. He invited her to a concert with her daughter, and like they all had a great time or whatever. And I was just like, that's really cool that somebody would be open enough to at that level of fame to have a conversation with a random person and realize that everybody has value, right? Everybody can provide something to somebody, right? And you don't know what this person's going to provide to you, but maybe they have a keen insight into life or a perspective that maybe you never took into consideration. And I think we all have that, right? And that's what I love about DMX. That story right there, I feel like really surmised what he was all about. We saw, and we heard the songs, right? I put this on social media. I think DMX was able to expose his own self, and in this era of mental health awareness, I think what DMX did, he was like one of the very first to talk about the demons and the struggles that he has to deal with, and expose himself and be vulnerable in that context for other people to look at him and be like, that's not weak. That's like that. My man's telling like what he's going through. Like that's a real thing. And he was one of the very first to not really back down from that. I'm slipping, I'm falling, I can't get up. Like that hits home. And we've all been through those trials and tribulations to some degree, various. And I absolutely identify with DMX. And so, rest in peace, my man.
Absolutely. And that woman that you're referring to that sat next to DMX on the airplane, I believe she was traveling with her daughter. And her daughter knew who DMX was and recognized him, but they had two different seats on the plane. Fortunately for the mom, she was able to sit next to DMX, and that's when they were going through social media strategies. This is how organic posts work.
Yep.
Posts always work better with a photo.
Yep.
And to see that connection, and I think DMX was just so immersed in that conversation was because that woman didn't know who DMX was. She just saw him as a regular guy, but she also recognized that, okay, this guy is pretty famous because people were saying stuff on the plane, saying hello. So she understood that, okay, this guy's a big-time celebrity, but she didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
And they just had this conversation. He loved the talk that they had on the airplane, talking about social media strategy, and then he invites them to his show that night. That goes to show the kind of person that DMX is. And we could sit here and talk about the hits. And like you said, Saul, I'm a millennial. So I grew up on DMX with him as music at our middle school and high school dances. We would listen to DMX warming up because at that time, DMX
Just
was
gonna
like,
give it to you. I'm going to give it to you.
well, you would see me on the dance floor when they're playing Up in Here, and I'm like dancing like that corny white guy doing all like the Like Mike dances and just being super corny. But DMX, he had that rhythm, and his music just made you feel good. And we would listen to X Gon' Give It To You while warming up for games. We would listen to the Rough Riders anthem as well.
Oh.
And any time, we would be warming up and all you heard was the little clap before the Rough Riders anthem, we knew it's going down. It's about to go down. And my favorite DMX movie reference was from the movie This Is the End. And it's the apocalyptic movie with Seth Rogen and James Franco and all those guys. Well, they're in the house together, and Jay says, I don't need a pack. I'm a lone wolf. I'm like DMX. And Seth Rogen says, DMX was not a lone wolf. He had the Rough Rider crew. What do you think you could stop, drop, and open up shop by yourself? But going back to DMX as the person, one thing you can always tell by how good of a person someone is after they pass is when they bring up all the things that isn't about your career.
Yeah.
I remember when Lute Olson passed away, you could sit there and talk about the number of incredible basketball accomplishments he did at Arizona and Iowa and all that, but it was Lute Olson, the person, the lessons that he taught to his players off the court. That's what paid dividends for these guys. The same thing with Kobe Bryant. You heard about how much of a legend he was as a basketball player, but what he did for people off the court is really, I think, what summarizes someone. And DMX, you would hear all the stories of the lady that you just said. I remember seeing a post on, I think Complex might have posted it, when he was on the slingshot ball.
Yeah, with his daughter.
With his daughter. And his daughter looked like she was no older than 8, 9 years old.
And she was terrified. And he was too.
And he was too, but he held her hand and said, listen, we're going to go through this together. I got you, baby. And I've been on plenty of those rides before, and I remember being, 8, 9-year-old going on the Mega Drop at the Pima County Fair and just being scared shitless because all I thought was, oh my goodness, the little thing that holds you down.
Yeah.
I always have this fear that it's just going to like unlock while we're at the top.
Yeah, same.
And I'm just,
yeah. That's why I hold on as tight as I can so I don't fall.
Yeah, exactly.
The stupidest thing ever. Like, that ain't gonna stop. If I'm that high up and I just start slipping out, I ain't gonna be able to hold myself.
Yeah.
That's 250 lbs that's going right through the freaking ground.
But DMX recognized that she was scared out of her mind during this experience, held her hand, talked her through it the whole time while he was also scared, and just kind of calmed her down and was like, look, you did it. The ride's over with. You did it. And she was, you could tell she was in shock, but she kind of felt proud of herself because she went on this monstrous ride with her dad and she did it. And I think that's so incredible. I also saw another post of a guy in Buffalo that said one time DMX came by on tour and he just went into a random IHOP, went into the back of the kitchen and started cooking omelets with all the cooks. And that was like the best thing that ever happened in Buffalo that year.
What? That's awesome. That's what I love the most. I know a lot of people think about like, oh man, it would be cool to like hang out with like Larry Fitzgerald, or it would be cool to like hang out with, said celebrity or Michael Jordan or whatever, like at the club or at his house or doing some fancy shit, right? I don't care about any of that. I would love just to do some layman's work or some regular ass stuff with those guys. Because I feel like in those environments and in those situations, you get who they really are, not the perception of who they really are. When you go to the club, when you're out in public, you're getting their persona, right? But if we're on the golf course and it's just us four and there's nobody else around, now you get to know who they really are. They're going to talk to you and they're going to react and they're going to act the way they really are. You know what I mean? If we're playing poker in an intimate setting, nobody else is around. It's just like 6 or 8 of us. That's how you really know who a person really is. You know what I mean? Like, those are the types of things that I think are just so awesome. And when they can humble themselves to go into the back and be a line cook for us, essentially, that's on another level of humanity that I absolutely love. But anyway, that's this episode of the Total BS podcast. Again, please, Justin, tell them where they can find us.
R.I.P. DMX, you will be missed. Just cultural icon, man. Music, movies, the whole thing. DMX, you will be missed. But this episode of the Total BS podcast, we had fun, but we're going to have more fun episodes moving forward. So please, 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 on our YouTube page, go to Total BS Podcast, smash the subscribe button, leave us a comment, share with all your friends, go to all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, give us a like and a follow, Total BS Podcast. And then Total BS is everywhere. I mean, anywhere that you can listen to a podcast, we're on there. So if you're a Spotify person, if you're an Apple person, if you're a Google person, whatever, go search Total BS Podcast, subscribe, rate, review, tell us what you think of the show. Because we're gonna have plenty of guests moving forward. That's gonna give us a good look, and I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, until we see you next time, the heavyweight champ says peace. So peace.
Yo, your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just a part of this program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You not whack, you just